I just hear you going, "Hey man, I got the meat sweats here.
That's right.
How you doing?
That's
How
right.
you doing?" And I look over at you, and you're wiping your brow, and you're wiping your face, and I'm like, "Me too."
Same.
Same.
Right.
I have to tell you that, like, you talking with you is probably one of the most exciting conversations and the one I was looking forward to the most, because I know it's probably really weird for you, but when we worked together, I was young. I had done some shows and everything, but like I really did learn a lot from you. And I know it's probably
Aw.
weird, but I really, really, truly did. And whenever anybody asks me about performing and timing and thinking, I just always say, you know what, I learned tremendously from Brett Barlow, because when we were performing and you're the band leader, so you're in charge of the timing, I learned how to listen to the audience's applaud. So when playoffs would happen, it was based off of if they're still applauding or not. And I would go to move and I'm like, oh, I have to wait for the band. I have to wait for the playoff before I
Right.
move. And that was so
Yeah.
incredibly important. And then taking those lessons after Ringling Brothers really helped me to listen to the audience and not just, oh, I'm doing a show and do the blocking. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Well, that's part of it. You know, the audience is so critical,
Right.
as we're all finding out now.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Yeah, you
you
can't
have
really do shows without the audience.
no, not really.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get that, although if you're Saturday Night Live, I guess you can, I don't know. But that, it's just you need that interaction as a performer, I think, at every level, whether
Right.
it's, a third grade music class or Broadway, and
Right.
every step in between, you need that. Yeah.
How many years total were you on Ringling?
23 and a half, I think, right at 23 and a half.
23 and a half, right. And then
Yeah.
when you do the calculations.
No math. I was not told there was going to be math here. So.
No, but I mean, we're talking about 400 shows a year.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
On
But,
average.
right at maybe 10,000 shows.
No, gotta be more than that.
I don't know, maybe. Well, I don't know. For 20 years, 400 a year would be 8,000. And then
I guess
another, and that, that's not figuring in all the time that you work during rehearsals. And that's not figuring in at least one more a week for a run through or a dress rehearsal.
right, because we did full dresses for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like if we had, let's say, a 12-show week, that was just shows.
Yeah.
And that did include when we got into a new city that we did a full dress rehearsal,
Yeah.
costume,
Got to do a run through.
everything for the first 3
Mhm.
months. And then even after those 3 months, we did full rehearsals, but not dress, like maybe, but we'd still do the full run through, just no costume,
Right.
no this.
And
that.
anytime we had a break, if we had a week off or 2 weeks off or 5 weeks, you have to reacquaint everybody with the whole process.
Totally.
But yeah, absolutely. Just like the circus itself. You got to figure every. I guess after the New York opening of the Red Show, they would start working on the Blue Show.
Right.
Start working on that immediately. And that had gone on for however many decades.
Right.
And I'm sure there were a lot of things that were in the works that just never materialized. And it's, yeah, who knows? I can't really think of, there were acts that we would see like for the first couple of months of the show, and then they would go away. Acts that just weren't quite as advertised. They didn't quite make it, and there was always one. It seemed like there was always one there for several tours in a row. One act that made it into winter quarters, but it didn't make it out.
Yeah.
And how different the show was when we started, and then, oh, we thought this was going to work great. It didn't work at all. So then you got to come up with something else, and then it works, really well.
Well, what's interesting is in every live show and every performance, there is a huge growth. Even if you're not changing the show, like the acts or the lines or anything, that the show has a different feel after the performers start doing it after a while. It's like what we opened with, Zing Zang Zoom. When we closed, the show was completely
different. Yeah.
Even though it was the same acts, the same
Yeah.
lines, the same blocking, the same everything, it was a different show just because every performer kind of fell into it. But I have a funny story that you'll remember. I don't. Well, you don't. Well, one I know you remember, but this other one I'm not sure if you do. So we'll
allegedly.
Check.
Okay.
So at the beginning of opening of Zing Zang Zoom, you'd play the national anthem. So I'd run up on the float. I had this pyro gun, and I'd shoot this comet. And this comet would go to the center ring, and we had all the pyro on the stage. It was the most exciting opening. I was like,
it was great.
I loved that opening because anyway, so cool. Well, that's how it was supposed to happen.
Right.
It was going to be amazing, and then, for whatever reason, this particular show, and you're on my left. You're on my left.
Right. Yep.
I pick up the pyro gun, and I fumbled it because I'm giving lines and I'm like doing it, and I kind of I don't look. I just pick it up and shoot it. Well, this day I was like, and I hit the button, and the comet goes sailing towards the bandstand.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Right at us. Yep.
Right at you guys.
Right at us.
And those comets, the way they work, right? Once they're on fire, they burn out. So the distance is determined how fast they burn. So like the longer the comet, it means it's going to burn 15 seconds or 10 seconds or 3 seconds or whatever it is. And that determines how far it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this comet, so it's a disc, is on fire, and it hits the ground right in front of the bandstand. And you had this little wall that's like 3 feet high.
Right.
And it bounces off the ground, ricochets, hits the wall, flies like literally over right over your head up. And you're like, giving them the cues. And all of a sudden I see you go, and the whole band, and I'm just looking at you, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just shot pyro at you. Oh my gosh. I remember after I got off the float, I ran right by you, and you looked at me like, because you had your horn, and you're like, I was like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those, that's the beauty of live entertainment, right? It's like everybody, and the thing is, when I would have people come visit the show, I would always tell them, every single thing that you saw today, everything was intentional. It was completely intentional. We completely meant to do that. So I wonder if anybody thought, man, he shoots at the band every time. That's kind of weird,
That's hilarious that you tell people that. You're like, yep, it's all part of the show.
I would tell them, it's like the tiger growls is right when he's supposed to. The high wire guy that looks like he's going to fall off the wire, he's done that 1,000 times,
Man.
But
I remember that because I would base, it's funny because after those things, right, I would base, when I'd see other shows, if a mistake was supposed to happen, off of the crew.
Right.
Not the performer, because the performers are always like, whoa, I almost fell. Oh, this happened. But if you see the crew guys sitting there like,
nothing.
Nothing's happening. It's when the crew guys go, oh my gosh, then
Right. We had a performance director one time that was really good at selling that. Like there would be something happening on the wire, and he was just far enough out of the spotlight that you could still see him, but he wasn't in the spotlight.
Right.
And he would lunge towards, and it was so perfect. And you could watch the audience, and he would get 4 or 5 people every single time.
That's fun. That's a performer for you.
Yeah, he was a former acrobat, and he knew how to. Yeah, he knew exactly what was up. But it was fun. I remember one time the ringmaster of the show, when I first started, we were out in California somewhere, and he was singing the national anthem at a baseball game, and he started too high. He started in a key that was not his regular key. I don't know if he was just amped up when he got out there, but I was like, oh man, Rocket's Red Glare is going to be, this might be a Carl Lewis like situation, but he just dug in and just nailed it. But it was close. I was really sweating it for him because I knew
For the
like
whole
I could.
song.
Yeah.
So
Like
wait, so you can tell, immediately, like if knowing a performer's range, like you're working with this guy for years, or you're working with this guy for a lot of shows, you know his range, and so as soon
yeah,
as he began the song, you could tell, ooh, he started too
trouble.
high.
Yep. I was like,
Wow.
oh, this could be bad.
See, okay, so here's something interesting that I associate a lot with music and magic, because people sometimes will ask me as a magician, they're like, oh, when you see another magician, do you know how they do it? Or are you always trying to figure it out? And my answer is, I'm not trying to figure it out, but I know how they do it almost 99.9% of the times. And it's not because I'm trying to figure it out, it's because I can read magic, like reading music, right? Like look at this piece of sheet music and you go, oh, I know what this is. I know what it sounds like. I know the tempo. I know what this is. I see it and I go, there's a black, I don't know, there's black squiggly lines. I don't know what it means. I don't really understand what this is or whatever. I don't know what this is.
Right.
But with magic, it's the same way, right? Like if I can read magic, quote unquote, I can watch a performance and not try to figure it out, but I just see the patterns, the way they're speaking, different concepts and how to deceive people, different principles in work and in motion to pull off the illusion. And someone who can't read magic would go, how did he do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Just
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
different.
I think there comes a point as a performer, or as anybody that gains a certain level of expertise in anything, that you stop watching the show and you stop watching for what you understand about it. It's like when I was the performance director on Big Apple for a while, I watched,
Right.
because I would watch every show like I used to watch the circus. Like I'm watching the crew, watch how the crew, if I can tell if the crew is going to be behind setting something up, they're going to need more music here because they're 5 or 10 seconds behind, which is going to put them another 10 or 15 seconds behind here.
Right.
Yeah, I think based on what you bring to every performance, that's how you relate to it and that's how you watch it.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. Um, you know, when we were on tour, like I said, working with the live band was so invaluable. Oh my gosh. It was just, I mean, anybody who hasn't worked with a live band, I didn't get it, right? I didn't get it because before people would say, oh, we're doing the show, we're going to have a live band. And it's like, so what? Like, I didn't really, big deal.
Why?
Okay. Yeah, why?
Why?
You have 5 more people minimum just to make it sound right. And then it's like, why don't we just put a CD on? Who cares? And after working
Right.
with a live band, it's like, oh man, I miss that.
That's why, right?
Yeah, that's why. But that's true. I mean, like in certain parts of the shows where you'd had to vamp or something goes wrong, and I'd look at you, and there's certain times in the show where it's like, hey, you need to stretch this a little bit. We need 30 more seconds. And working with you directly to, hey, here's the cue, here it comes, and boom, boom. So it fit the music, fit the performance, and vice versa. The performance is fitting to the music, and so it had that cohesion, which makes a seamless performance, and it just enhances it, as opposed to like, oh, shoot, I'm early, I have 30 more seconds of the track. With you, it's like, all right, ready, go.
We can do it. Right. Yeah, that's everything follows the music. The lights follow the music.
Yep.
The action on the floor. Maybe, I mean, the performers don't, but the performers know that the music is going to follow them. I mean, I'm not going to play the cue for the guy jumping over the other guy on the wire until he actually jumps over.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And you can always tell how much. The band's not really there for when everything's perfect. The band's there for when things aren't perfect. And in live entertainment, there's something every show that's just a little bit different. And that's why you need that band.
That was intentional, though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, job security, right?
Yeah, that's right. That was fun. Now, every show, well, okay, so I had to wear an in-ear monitor
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this. So
I'm
I had
sure.
3 packs. I had 3 packs. I had 2 mics and I had my in-ears. And the in-ears were allowed you to talk to me.
Right.
And there was about 4 people at certain times that could. It would be you, number one, then Monitor
Right.
World in the back could say something to me. Then front of house, which for most of our tour was Danny, could say something to me.
Right.
And then they got a set of another like wireless mic that would patch into my ears from house for production manager. So
Right.
at certain points, there was 4 different people that could talk in my ear. Now, of course, I can't say anything back.
That's the beauty of
That's
it.
the beauty of it. I can't say anything back because I'm on mic and I'm in front of people.
Right.
So it made for some really interesting times.
Yeah.
And I have pride and I pride myself on the fact that I never broke. Like I never missed a line. I just
Yep.
always hit it, and you would say things to me, and you're like, "I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you," and I'm like, "No, no, I'm professional. I'm gonna do this." And
Right.
one time, do you remember what it was?
I don't remember,
Oh,
but I'm sure
okay,
that I will.
okay, no, you'll remember as soon as I say it. So again, at the beginning of the show. So during the show, you would say little jokes to me, or say things, and I might smile, and I'd look at you after my mic was mute, and I'd say, "Brett," and you're just laughing, having a good time.
Really.
Because the whole audience has no idea what you're saying to me and I have to do my lines. So this time my mom was visiting on tour. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My mom was visiting on tour and you had known her and this is probably year 2 or something. And right like maybe before the show earlier that day, my mom, because she's like me, she's like curious and she's like, "Can I sit in the bandstand? Like I want to sit there right in the action." And you were like, so I said, "Oh, let's ask Brett." And you're like, "Yeah, that's no problem. Like, I'll work it through." Really nice about it, of course. And I didn't think anything of it. So the very next show, so it was like the show before she was going to sit in the bandstand. I get up at the very beginning of the show. My ears are in, and I say, "Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages," and perfect. I see you at the mic, and you turn around to the band. You go, "All right, boys. So Alex's mom is going to sit with us tomorrow, like next show." And like just the way that you said it and the whole, like the band knew because the band could hear you talk to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they knew that you would mess with me. And it was like this, "I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you." And just the way that you said it, so Alex's mom is going to sit with us. And I was like, and all of you, you got me. I completely flubbed my line. And the
Right.
whole band goes, "Yes!"
They finally got you to break. Right.
Got me. And I was like, "Oh man!" And that was the one time. The one time.
Right. Well, I would try to do little things to every ringmaster to keep them loose,
Yeah.
because if you really think about what you're doing, and especially in the beginning of
Yeah.
the tour, or for big shows, opening night in the Garden, or in LA or anywhere, basically any big full house, or if something's going on with you personally that you need a little distraction from, you need to kind of relax a little bit. And I would always do that. And even with my guys, like right before opening night, I would throw a half a dozen new changes, and I would hold them back until opening night because I wanted them because they're going to have a lot going on in their head. And I don't want them to be tripped up thinking, "Oh, this one thing is going to kill me. I've got to get this one thing right." So I would throw half a dozen things at them just to keep them kind of on their toes and help them be loose. Because if you're
Wow.
if you're tight, if you can't perform. People don't perform like that. You have to be loose. You have to be natural.
I ne-
Believe that.
100%. I never realized that. That's fascinating that you would do that. And so the intention was that if you threw in something new, they wouldn't be focused on the thing that they're like, "Oh, I want to nail this," and then therefore
They
not.
wouldn't be focused on a 2.5 hour show. They would be focused on three things.
Got it. I see what you're
Three
saying.
little things that would take 2 seconds apiece or 3 seconds apiece. as opposed to 2 hours of a show that, oh, something's going to get me and I'm going to fall on my face.
Right. Right. Oh man, that's fascinating.
That's something that Dave Killinger taught me, and so I
Really
used that from him. Yep.
nice. Another war stories. Whenever I think of tour with you, was our Sunday evening after loadout lunch
Yeah.
and dinner and hitting the spots all over the country because you have
Right.
that book.
Yeah. I had the diners, drive-ins, and dives, or something like that. Yeah. And I would try to find one every place. I remember we found one was it up in Seattle or
Yeah.
Spokane or wherever it was? The Bobby's Hawaiian
Oh,
place. It was so good.
best.
So good.
The
So good.
best. I have the one that I remember because it was fun. It was funny. Now, I mean, I'm a little bigger than I was on tour, but when I was on tour, I was 23, $140. I mean, I was
Right.
little. I was a small guy, and
Yeah, but man, you could crush. You could eat whatever I could eat, and
yeah.
I weighed twice what you did. It was unbelievable.
And so we went to Moochie's in Salt Lake City.
That's right. Oh my God, I love that place.
Whenever I would go back to Salt Lake City or I'd meet someone from Salt Lake City, I'd always go, I know Salt Lake City. They go, yeah. I go, yeah, Moochie's. And they're like, what? You know Moochie's. So we went in between shows. I think it might have been a split day. I think it was a split day because we had like a morning show and you're like, hey, let's go to Moochie's. And they do subs there. I was like, yeah, I'm down. So we would always go to every city we'd go to a different place to eat. So we went and I'm like, and I'd usually just get whatever you got, right? And so you got this meatball sub. And we're doing meatball subs. So doing meatball subs. And towards the end of this sub, I mean, I could down anything because I was running around anyways, but you kind of were finishing it off. And the last few bites, you're like, oh man, this is rough. And usually nothing really bothers me. And I was like, this is a little rough, like eating this whole.
I might be in trouble here, right?
So then we have a show that night. And you in my ears as we're doing the show and I'm like running around doing my lines. I just hear you going, hey man, I got the meat sweats here.
That's right.
How you doing? How you doing? And I look over at you and you're wiping your brow and you're wiping your face and I'm like, me too.
Same. Right. I remember one time that, we were in Nashville. We were playing it was the new building, the one that's probably 10 years old.
Yeah.
And right when it's the worst possible time for the grid not the worst possible time, but all the lights went out right when the Globe guys were going up with either 5 or 6 bikes, like their last trick. And there was like, we started playing their music for the last trick, and then all the lights went out. Someone had hit like a transformer in the area, and like all the power was out everywhere. And ours went out right at that exact moment. So you hear the music stop. The music is still playing. The band is still playing, but you can't hear it.
Right.
And then you can hear the motorcycle, and then they went down. And so one at a time you kind of hit and then the emergency lights came on in the building, but the emergency lights for our grid weren't on. Actually, you know what? You could hear the band because our emergency power did kick in, but the lighting department hadn't turned on their emergencies, so you couldn't see anything. So there were some heads spinning after that. But
wow,
yeah, it was one of those freak things that happens, and they didn't have their emergency power.
Sure, of course.
Crazy, right? I think it's happened maybe a couple of times like that where we've lost. One time we lost the front of house console, so there was no sound at all.
Wow.
So like,
did you guys keep going, or I mean, you guys have to all stop, right? And you just kind of have to hold until.
We played. We kept playing. We could hear each other. The monitor console hadn't gone out. It was actually in it was in Louisville, and it was on April Fool's Day, and we're playing, and all it stopped. We couldn't hear it in the house. We could hear it in our ears, so we could hear each other. I could talk to them. They could, but the performers were then having to. It was really kind of cool because the performers were having to work with no music.
Right.
And so they were working strictly on audience feedback, and some of them were really good and some of them were not. But like, I remember the Aguiar brothers were great. The High Wire Kids were great.
Yeah. Those acts would, I think, excel in certain things. But I mean, with that, like High Wire, if they know how to work the audience, you don't need music. It's just terrifying in and of itself, right? And you can get those thrills almost with any thrill act. You know what I mean? You can really work off of that.
The music can help it a lot, but it's not really. I mean, we can put a build under something to kind of increase the tension here or there, but the act itself provides the real moment.
Right. But yeah, I mean, every show when something goes, I mean, those are the things that, I remember with you, there was times where I think we did lose power. I think we're at George Mason in Fairfax.
Oh yeah, always crash there. Yeah.
Right?
Always. Yeah,
and
little bitty building, they couldn't handle our power. And I think the year after that and subsequent years, we had a backup generator on site.
Because I remember when it happened, and like people who had been on tour there before, it was just like, oh yeah, it always happens here. And I'm like, but if we knew that going in,
right.
Why?
Every year they thought they had it fixed and figured out, and it didn't actually get figured out until they brought in a backup generator, because it was a little tiny building, little bitty thing.
Oh, it was at a college. It was at George Mason University. That's actually where Larry the Cable Guy was. That's when he came to film on our show. Larry the Cable Guy.
That guy there are, well, I guess there's 3 people I know that can play a trumpet without the mouthpiece. My son Barrett can actually do it. It's insane. This amazing trumpet player that I knew back in Oklahoma City named Larry Skinner could do it, and Larry the Cable Guy can play a trumpet without a mouthpiece.
What?
Serious. I was walking around backstage. I had my horn, but I didn't have my mouthpiece in it. And he was, still in his character. And he was like, man, I'd like to come to sit down on the bandstand with you guys. I'd have way more fun down there than I would in the seats. And so he picked up my horn and he started playing it without a mouthpiece. And I was like, is everybody in the world a better trumpet player than I am? This is
even Larry the Cable Guy.
Larry the Cable Guy. So like his big deal was he was going to run out with the shovel and pick up after the elephant.
Right.
And it was one of the few shows I can remember where they didn't, make anything for him to shovel up. And he was there for one show, and it didn't happen. And I was like, what are the odds? But he was a nice guy, really smart.
Oh yeah, no, I remember the time that I spent with him, and we did the Assistant's Revenge. So at the end of the routine, he's all locked up. And then I'm like, I would get out, and he was all locked up. And I said, hey, thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. Have a great day. And I walked out, and like the last scene, he was like, Alex, this ain't funny, man. You need to get me out of here. And like, I'm just dying. They, what they do is they just roll. They roll because they're trying to get anything that's coming out of him. And he's just going on for like 30 seconds of just saying all these things.
He's giving them what they wanted, right?
Yeah. And I mean, afterwards, when they say cut, everybody laughs,
Hey, perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. So that was a good one. You remember when I think we were in Jacksonville, and there was a guy backstage that hit one of the
water main over
water.
It was raining backstage like crazy. It was on a Sunday too, so there was no. I mean, there's no good time to hit a water main, but on Sunday it was really bad because there was no. I guess they had to call some plumber or something. I remember when it happened at like intermission or something. To my memory, we had to hold like 10 minutes for to get everything cleaned up, to get everything dried out, and then shut off so we could start up again. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
All those things are, when you look back and you say, oh, this happened. My friend Norm was just telling me um, about an earthquake happened when he was on tour and he was on stage and there was an earthquake. And I'm
Wow.
like, what? I say, I've never had that. But the most amazing thing is, these are all things that, when we're talking about that the audience has no idea are
No
happening.
idea.
They have no idea because you're sitting in there waiting for the show to start and they're like, well, they're starting 10 minutes late. And it's like, there's a flood going on. We're trying to just
There's
preserve the
4 inches of
show.
water everywhere. Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, someone comes on and they're like, there are technical issues. And then,
Yeah.
and usually, actually, I find it funny because as an entertainer, knowing there are technical issues, that usually that is, I'm thinking, what, the guy probably just, isn't dressed yet. And like,
Right. Somebody's not ready.
it's
Right.
like
That's
somebody just sitting
weird.
backstage going, I'm gonna have another, whatever, doing, whatever it is. And it's not really technical issues. Whenever it is technical issues, they don't say anything. It's just like, oh, fix it.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are all the fun things. I had a great time. I mean, if I was a ringmaster and I was like a singer, like, and actually was, the job, I would have loved to have been there for years and years and years. I just had such a blast. It was so much fun.
Oh, it's great. We're professional gypsies. It was always a great experience to travel extensively in your own country and
Yeah.
get paid to do it, and and be around a bunch of people that you like, and just have that shared experience for a long time. It was great. I would go back and do it in a second if it was like it was.
Yeah. And yeah, and then the train was just something else. I mean, that was a very, very special part. And just made it so unique. And I'm really happy that I got to do it, be a part of it, and in the capacity that I was. So it was a blast. But